tell us what it actually covers. What items are actually covered by this?
Ammunition, firearms, firearms accessories, which include a magazine or magazine loader, a firearm scope or optic, stock, grip, handguard, or body armor.
I'm Duane Urban, and welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast, featuring discussion on firearms, concealed carry, self-defense, the law, and much more. Designed to inform, educate, increase your survival in a critical incident. Welcome to the Urban Defense Podcast. I'm Duane Urban. Along with me is Andrew Saller, managing partner of Saller, Lord, Ernstberger, and Inslee. The episode tonight is an update on the 2024 Maryland legislative session and our second podcast on the topic this year. This is going to be post-mid-session and after crossover. Our returning guest is Andre McDonald from the McDonald Law Firm. Thank you for being here tonight, Andre.
Thanks for having me, Duane.
Along with us as well is Maryland National Committeewoman, political analyst, and Fox News contributor Nicolee Ambrose.
Great to be with you.
And on the phone, we have Delegate Chris Tomlinson from Maryland's District 5. Welcome, Chris.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Nicolee, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, thanks again for having me. It's such a service to the community that you are covering these incredibly important issues. So I represent the state of Maryland to the Republican National Committee. And in addition to doing that, there's obviously a lot more work to be done. So we certainly focus on grassroots activism and helping just fight for a two-party system in the state, right? In Annapolis, what we're going to be talking about today, there is a one-party progressive monopoly, and it's so important that we have a true two-party state to hopefully foster competition and make us the best we can be.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for that. And Chris, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
I'm in my second year as a state delegate representing Carroll County and a little piece of Frederick County. Was elected in November of 2022, sworn in January 23. So this is my second legislative session. I serve on the House Judiciary Committee, and then within that committee, I'm also on the Public Safety Subcommittee. And prior to my time in the General Assembly, I was a Carroll County Republican Central Committee member and served on the state board for a little bit of time along with Nicolee.
Thank you for being here with us tonight. So for those who tuned into our previous podcast on the 2024 session, you know that we covered some proposed bills, those that we had at the time of production. And we'll go over those again briefly and kind of discuss where they're at. But there is some more bills and information that we do need to go over, and we'll be doing that tonight. But first, Andre, you have an update on the HQL litigation, do you not?
Yes, I do. Fortunately, on Thursday, the entire Fourth Circuit heard the case. And
is this that en banc review we discussed?
Yes, the en banc review. I don't know. My French is a bit rusty.
Oui, monsieur.
Yeah.
Oui. The en banc review is basically the entire, all 11 judges on the court hear the case. So Maryland presented their argument, and wouldn't you know, they're relying on a footnote. Their entire argument is based on footnote 9 from the Bruin decision. And basically they're asking the Fourth Circuit to dismiss the case and send it back to the district court and rule in their favor. So you are asked, what is footnote 9 from Bruin?
I was wondering that.
Same thing. Losing sleep over it.
So Justice Thomas in footnote 9 in Bruin said, nothing in our analysis should be interpreted to suggest the unconstitutionality of the 43 states shall issue licensing regimen because the shall issue regime objective criteria do not necessarily prevent law-abiding responsible citizens from exercising their Second Amendment right.
So what does all that mean?
Nothing. It doesn't really apply, I don't think. It's just, there's an old saying, when the facts are on your side, you argue the facts. When the law is on the side, you argue the law. When you don't have the facts or the law, you just pound the table. This is the state pounding the table.
Okay. So what are your predictions here? Well, I guess what can we expect? What kind of timeline are we looking at here?
Well, probably by the summer we should have a decision. And if I'm a betting man, the losing party is likely to go to the Supreme Court.
We're going to take it all the way to the Supreme Court.
Yeah, those famous words, all the way to the Supreme Court.
Okay, so stay tuned. then.
Stay tuned.
Very good. All right, so Andrew, what does the Maryland General Asylum have in store for us this session?
The biggest issue continues to be taxes, revenue. Where can they find it? Which calc cushions can they pull money out of? I was just down there this week, and I watched them pass the transportation appropriation, and we've got some Uber taxes and Lyft taxes coming in our future, and higher vehicle registration and everything else. So money, fortunately or unfortunately, is the big focus this year. That we're having a great deal of difficulty balancing the budget. We cannot have a deficit in a traditional fashion. The good delegate will tell us more about this, I'm sure, but money is the big thing, and that's going to influence their view on the Second Amendment this year.
And we do have a number of gun bills here, not as many as last session, if I recall correctly. Not all of them crossed, and we'll talk about that when we get there. So why don't we do this? Why don't we go ahead and discuss some of the bills, or actually all the bills, that we discussed in the previous episode on the 2024 legislative session and see where they're at. And then we'll get into the ones that we didn't get a chance to discuss really at length.
Absolutely. March 18th was crossover day. So any bill that is not crossed over by then has problems for its future. And that's where we find ourselves today.
Okay. And when does the, Nicolee, do you know when the session ends? When does the session end?
I believe it's April 8th. It's a
Is it
Monday.
April 8th?
If
You are correct.
great.
Yes. Yep.
Okay. Very good. So
Chris is counting down the days he's been tortured in Annapolis, but he does a great job of representing Carroll and Frederick.
absolutely. So let's go ahead and get into those bills. Let's start with House Bill 21, which was straw purchase participant. What do we have on that?
This was to allow the warrantless arrest of someone who the police had probable cause to believe had participated in a straw purchase. It was referred to committee, and nothing has happened since then. And unless Chris feels differently, this bill is probably dead.
So not going anywhere.
It is definitely dead. It did not have a cross file, and it is, yes, in the ground.
Okay. So House Bill 41, Violent Firearms Offenders Act of 2024.
This bill would have added a variety of crimes and prohibitions on district court commissioners, preventing them from releasing individuals that are charged with certain firearm-related crimes, use of a firearm in a crime of violence, things of that nature. And this was going to be an emergency bill that would have gone into effect immediately. However, it was introduced by Delegate Mangione, and then he ended up withdrawing it. So this bill is dead.
Any discussion on that one?
And I know that Nicolee had mentioned a couple times before we got on here about the Republican public safety package. This bill was a part of that public safety package. Just wanted to mention it.
Okay. Senate Bill 39, Gun Theft Felony Act of 2024.
This was also a very strong Republican bill, had a number of senators that co-sponsored it, and designed to penalize people specifically who steal firearms. You often hear in Baltimore City, there are great complaints about the number of firearms that are stolen from surrounding jurisdictions and used to commit crimes in the municipality. And this would have greatly increased the crime of stealing a firearm. Because it is a firearm, it would have carried up to 10 years in jail and or a $2,500 fine. And as a result, though, however, this is going nowhere. It's in the committee, and it is not crossed over.
This is the second item in that 2024 Republican public safety agenda that were just common sense legislation to help keep our society more safe. Who really is going to stand there in debate in Annapolis that is better for people to steal a weapon and not be penalized when they're saying they oppose guns. So apparently they only oppose law-abiding citizens being able to protect and defend themselves, but criminals can have all the guns they want. So once again, I look at this and I don't understand how any Marylander thinks it's okay to pay representatives to want to punish law-abiding citizens and prop up criminals. This is absolutely outrageous. But I know, Chris, you were working on that, and there's a component of one of these bills that is the only good thing being folded into another piece of legislation, correct?
Yeah. It's another one coming up down the road here. We'll get to that. I'll bring that up.
All right. Senate Bill 179, Violent Firearm Offenders Act of 2024, similarly named to the one that we've already discussed.
Yes, and this was mainly targeted at people on probation or parole, so individuals who have already been convicted of an offense, and that if you used or possessed a firearm when you were prohibited from doing so because, once again, you were on probation or parole, and this is going to get really lawyerly here, it would not be a technical violation of probation or parole. In Maryland, a technical violation of probation or parole carries a maximum of 15 days of incarceration. So as a result of this, if you are convicted of possessing or using a firearm while you're on probation and parole and not supposed to be having firearms to begin with, a judge could give you your maximum backup time was the purpose of this legislation. And it also is going nowhere.
Andrew, do you think the reason this is not going anywhere because there's some federal litigation going on challenging a lot of these issues, whether or not someone who's on parole or on probation should be a prohibited person?
You are applying logic and rationality and a legitimate issue here. I am not sure, no offense to the delegate who is with us, that the members of the General Assembly in Annapolis gave it that due consideration. I think the bigger issue is they looked at perhaps the DEI statement accompanying this bill, and it found that it might have a disparate racial impact, and that was reason enough to oppose it.
All right, moving right along. Senate Bill 324, Firearms Safety Act of 2024.
This is another, we're using Firearms Safety Act a lot lately. This would affect people with, some would call them accidental, I would call them negligent discharges. And if you caused a negligent discharge within 90 days, you had to register and complete a firearms training course within 6 months of the incident. And as a result of this, if you did not complete it, you were going to have your permit revoked and things of that nature.
Okay, discussion. Anybody?
It is dead.
And then the final one that we discussed previously was Senate Bill 326. That was the questioning of a juvenile in a crime of violence involving a firearm.
In Maryland, in our infinite wisdom from the General Assembly in a previous session, we passed a law that greatly curtails the ability of the police to interrogate juveniles across the board without their parent or guardian present or without a lawyer. As a result of that, the ability of the police to take a follow-up action, get actionable intelligence, and do a number of other things has been greatly curtailed because no parent is going to allow their child to talk to the police. And this would have created an exception for crimes of violence that involve firearms, that a law enforcement officer could interrogate a suspect who was a minor, who could be 17 years, 11 months, and 29 days, and do so without their parent or guardian being present. This bill, though, cross-filed in the Senate and the House, dead.
Yeah.
Discussion.
Yeah. Well, whereas there was an appetite to peel back the juvenile justice reform bill from 2 years ago, when it came to the Child Interrogation Protection Act from 2 years ago, there was no appetite amongst the Democrats to peel any piece of that legislation back.
I'm just so confused on this issue because if you can get Democrat state's attorneys in counties with, very differing constituents and needs to all agree on one thing. What was it that made these Democrat delegates and senators say, let's forget these officers of the court. Let's forget these state's attorneys. Even though they were elected by our same constituents, they can't possibly know what they're talking about. We, sitting in Annapolis in a committee, are going to make our own independent decision and get paid to make our communities less safe. Like, what was going through these Democrat senators and delegates' minds to paint a target and to continue to paint a target on these children's backs?
They, I mean, I wish I could tell you what's in their minds, but they've got excuses for everything. I mean, they just don't feel I'm actually shocked the juvenile law reform bill passed. I mean, if it was not something that was coming from the Senate president and the speaker and the chair of the House Judiciary Committee and the Senate Judicial Proceedings Committee, if it had been anybody else, that bill wouldn't have passed. I mean, even that bill, which I would argue is the most important bill that will get passed this year, it passed out of both chambers and needs to. We need to get the bills to match each other to fully pass. But even that bill, I remember early on the Black Caucus, who was obviously a very powerful group of legislators. I was being told that they were not on board. At some point, the votes must have been whipped because they eventually did get on board, and there was only, I think, maybe like six legislators who voted against it. But even that one, I was really worried that was going to get through. So it's mind blowing because it's not my district that's under, that's a war zone. It's not my constituents that are getting gunned down the street. It's the Democrats, and I don't. If I had the answer, then maybe I could convince them otherwise.
Okay. Anything further on that one?
I am going to be very interested to see if the House and Senate are going to be able to work out their two companion pieces of legislation to hammer out one final bill to get to the governor. What are your thoughts of that, Delegate?
I think they'll get it done because that's one of these bills where this is kind of like the like last year, some of like the big abortion and gun related bills. If this bill does not pass and end up on the governor's desk, I think heads will turn and committee chairs won't be committee chairs anymore. I don't think this is one of those bills where there's an option that it doesn't get on the governor's desk.
You heard it here first, folks.
All right, so we're going to move on now to the bills that we haven't yet discussed in previous episodes. So we're going to start now with House Bill 296, which was cross-filed as Senate Bill 348, Firearms Right to Purchase, Own, Possess, and Carry. Andrew.
In Maryland, if this passes, do not let your sole use of marijuana be an impediment to you lawfully possessing a gun. Even potheads can have guns if this passes. It is passed the Senate and it is in the House. Delegate, where are we with this?
So yes, so this was actually a Republican bill, introduced on both the Senate and House side by Republicans. Did not get a vote on the House side, but the Senate version got through, so that will be coming back over to my committee very, very soon. Democrats will support pro-gun bills only when it has to do with people who want to smoke pot. So there you go. If you want to pass a pro 2A gun bill, make sure it involves pot.
So just add as a rider marijuana use to every bill you want to get through, and you'll get it through, right?
Right.
There you go. So, okay.
Solve all crime problems in Maryland.
Apparently so. Okay, so House Bill 304. This was cross-filed as Senate Bill 39, the Gun Theft Felony Act of 24. We kind of touched on that name
Yes, the fine delegate is one of the co-sponsors of this bill. This would once again increase the crimes of stealing a firearm, increase the penalties, and seems like common sense to me. Delegate, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, well, well, that's kind of the overall theme of the General Assembly. Something that seems like it would be common sense, isn't so common down in Annapolis. So yeah, it's dead. I was a co-sponsor, but yeah, it was heard, and the sponsor, who is, I believe that is Rachel, I believe. Yeah, Muniz. Yeah, she's on my committee, and she gave amazing. Had a really great bill hearing. I mean, her husband is a pharmacist, got held up by gunpoint last year. So this is very personal to her. And it was an emotional hearing, but regardless, bill's not moving.
So Chris and Nicolee, maybe what we can add next time will be that the theft of a firearm would be a felony unless you're smoking marijuana.
Exactly.
In which case,
Correct.
that would solve two problems.
Exactly.
So there we go. Okay.
Or perhaps delegate add in theft of marijuana and firearms at the same time.
No, you have to have marijuana in your possession.
Yeah.
Yes.
What happens if you steal someone's hashish?
Ooh.
Oh, that's a good question.
Yeah.
Do we want to go down that rabbit hole today? All right.
I don't know if we're going to get to this one later, because she, the delegate who introduced the bill we're talking about, she also introduced a very similar bill. That was what bill was that? House Bill 659, which was theft of a handgun. Is that on your list to get to later?
It may be.
Right now, I can just we'll just go right to it live. We'll do it live
Yeah,
right
we'll just
here.
work our way through it.
Yep. And that, once again, increasing the penalties for stealing handguns. Delegate, how did this go down?
Also did. But this is interesting. So language from this bill was incorporated into another bill. So a bill that was introduced by my chairman, Luke Clippinger, and our majority leader, David Moon, both on House Judiciary Committee. They had a bill they had a bill last year. It almost made it through. If session had ran to 10 minutes after midnight, it would have gotten through, but it did not. And so they brought the bill back, but they incorporated into it language that I believe they stole from House Bill 659. So the bill's got a little something for everybody. The main part of the bill is it changes the drug kingpin statute, which, as somebody who's not a police officer or lawyer, I was not aware that kingpin was actually a legal term until I got to it.
It was also a movie.
Yes, as a lawyer, I'm very aware, and I've represented a number of kingpins, all the nicest and sweetest of people. I'd want them to be my neighbors.
Pillars of society.
Indeed.
Well, then you'll probably like this bill. Bill might help you out. So yeah, it changes the law in regards to individuals who are found in possession or distributing 50 or more pounds of weed, which, as we know now, is a legal product. Also, 50 pounds of weed is a crap load of weed, by the way. And then 448 grams or more of crack, I believe. So that's the main part of the bill. It's lessening.
Delegate, crack does not kill, guns kill. Remember that.
Yes.
Ah, yes.
So the main part of the bill is it's making.
And can I just interrupt very
yes.
briefly? This is House Bill 346 for all the people playing at home, along at home on their bingo cards.
In Senate Bill 404.
Yeah. So for the most part, the bill is pretty terrible. And then, what they did was they incorporated some language in there that said that if you knowingly possess, sell, or transfer a stolen firearm, you'll receive a felony with a max of 5 years. It doesn't say it's not exactly the theft of a handgun, which I remember this got brought up. We said, so if you're in possession, you're selling or transferring it. I mean, essentially, didn't you probably also steal it? But theft is not actually, the word theft is not in the language, but it's slightly similar, and it is creating a felony with a max of 5 years. So, I mean, that piece of the bill we liked, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough for most Republicans to vote for it. And that bill did pass through the House. So it's a very interesting bill. They kind of merged a bunch of different things into it.
So once again, this is where Democrats intentionally removed the word theft of a handgun, saying, no, that is okay. As long as you're a criminal stealing a handgun, then it's okay for you to have it, essentially.
Well, you can't, with this bill, it doesn't talk about stealing it, but it does make it a felony if you're in possession or if you're selling or if you're transferring a stolen firearm, but not the actual theft of it.
Not the actual act of the theft, I guess.
Yeah.
This is where I want to step back for a second and thank you for this community service, because no, we don't have a press that covers this incredibly important legislation. And once again, my mind is blown that we are all paying for the salaries of people who are debating in Annapolis how it is okay to steal someone's weapon, and that is not a problem. Thank you, Delegate Tomlinson.
All right, moving right along, we have House Bill 329, cross-filed as Senate Bill 102, public safety handgun permits, expiration and renewal periods for retired law enforcement officers. This doesn't really affect too many people, but it was on our list.
It is very controversial that we would allow retired law enforcement officers to have firearms if you ask the General Assembly.
Well, just give them marijuana,
Yes.
and you got it.
Yes.
It's a win.
Delegate, what are your thoughts of this piece of legislation?
It was at least on the House side, it was a bipartisan bill introduced by Delegate Grammer out of Baltimore County, and he teamed up with a Democrat, Gary Simmons, who has a law enforcement background. So it was a nice bipartisan attempt, but it is dead.
Next on the list, we have House Bill 430, firearms liability insurance, public wearing and carrying.
This was a bill that I was almost certain probably would move forward, knowing the Democratic priorities in Annapolis. I'm astounded at where we are. But this was the bill that would have required a concealed carry holder to have up to $300,000, or at least $300,000 in liability insurance if they're walking out and about. And Delegate, what happened with this?
This is one of those bills where I think it was so completely outrageous that I remember in the bill hearing, Democrats were also asking questions on my committee to the sponsor and the folks testifying, and you could kind of tell in the room that even the Democrats were like, "Yeah, this is a little crazy." And I mean,
did have 15 Democratic co-sponsors.
Yeah.
As crazy as that sounds, too.
Yeah, and I mean, the insurance industry came in. You know, they were like, "We wouldn't even know. We can't even do this." And it was just. I mean, don't get me wrong. A lot of outrageous bills passed, but this was you could kind of feel it in the room that even the Democrats were like, "All right, bridge too far."
It's exciting to know that at least they listened to the private sector testifying that insurers would not provide the insurance for this to be a possibility.
I have a simpler answer. The Third Circuit.
Okay.
They struck down a preliminary injunction on a similar statute in New Jersey. So,
Okay.
the Third Circuit had a case like this. Almost identical. I figured they just copied the New Jersey law and just dropped it in here in Maryland.
And we've seen a lot of that cutting and pasting and plagiarism going on from SB1, as we discussed in the one video that we shot last about some of the national cases, language coming from D.C. and New Jersey and New York and all of that working its way into Maryland. I was pleasantly surprised to see that one did not cross. So next we have on our sheet here, House Bill 546, that was cross-filed. Senate Bill 324, permits, accidental discharge, and training requirements. Did we kind of touch on that
We
language?
touched on this one. Yep.
Okay.
Dead.
Okay.
Yeah, we already talked about the cross file. Yeah, early on.
All right. House Bill 659, cross-filed as Senate Bill 378, criminal law, theft of a handgun. We talked about that as well.
Yep. Also, unfortunately, dead.
Yeah, that was the one that we were talking about the language that was incorporated into the drug kingpin bill.
All right. House Bill 684, prohibitions on wearing, carrying, and transporting a handgun.
This was introduced by Delegate Grammer, and similar to a lot of bills here, dead in committee. This would have required that you have criminal intent to be guilty of wear, carry, and transport violations. If you run into these cases, I represent a number of these good people. They accidentally drive their car into a secured parking lot, and they had a firearm in it when you're not supposed to. Yet they have a permit. Big misunderstandings abound, and this was to require them to actually intend to be committing a crime when they do so.
All right. So next on our list, unless I've gotten out of order here, is House Bill 779, handgun qualification licenses, personally identifying information, deletion, and destruction. Sounds like an administrative bill.
The delegate was a co-sponsor of this wonderful piece of legislation. He can tell us where it is, and unfortunately, the bad news about it at the same time.
Yeah, yes, I was a co-sponsor. I'm using past tense because it is in the ground. It is dead. It was a good bill. Delegate Hornberger had a great bill hearing, but it did not receive a vote prior to crossover, so it is no longer with us. So it would have had the state police permanently delete or destroy certain personal information relating to handgun qualification licenses under circumstances.
In this case here, this is all being challenged under the HQL provisions that's going on here. The Secretary of State Police was recording a wide variety of information about a person before they could purchase, rent, or receive a handgun. And if it is determined that the HQL is unconstitutional and is no longer required in Maryland, this would require the Secretary of State Police to destroy all of that information that is kept on Maryland citizens who had the audacity to exercise their Second Amendment rights.
How dare they?
So essentially, it's a backdoor. If the HQL is found to be unconstitutional, this is a backdoor registry of all firearms owners in Maryland.
Got it. All right. So next on our list, House Bill 794, cross-filed as Senate Bill 752, regulated firearms, Maryland voluntary do not sell firearms process. They don't want anybody to have guns, do they?
Correct.
All right. What is this,
Unless you have
Andrew?
drugs
Yeah.
and you're a
Yes.
criminal.
Well, with marijuana, of course, that just goes without saying.
I think it's just kind of modeled after the idea of it's kind of modeled after the do not
The Casino Exclusion Act.
yes, exactly. Yeah, with the casinos where, if somebody has a moment of clarity and so they're like, well, I don't want to ever go, and then if they relapse and this way they can't get back in the casino. It's kind of the same idea here with guns. It was introduced last year, didn't go anywhere. Introduced this year, it's not going anywhere. It's just kind of I don't know. It's not a good bill, but I guess if you want to put yourself on the list,
I represent a number of people that have been forced to put themselves on the casino exclusion list. That whenever you have a crime that occurs in any kind of proximity to the casino in Baltimore City, that's one of the conditions the prosecution demands as a part of the plea agreement, that your client submit to the Gambling Exclusion Act. And so now your rights to go in any casino in Maryland are now impaired. And these aren't even always for gambling-related offenses or anything like that, just a crime that happened to occur in or near the casino. And number two, it carries criminal penalties, and all the time I see people charged with it down in Anne Arundel County for going to Maryland Live after being voluntarily put on the exclusion list. And then it's not so simple. You can get on it with a written form. You can't just get off it immediately with a written form either. There are hoops you have to jump through, periods of time you have to wait, etc. So I could see this being, the intention of it is for individuals who, for whatever reason, don't want to allow themselves to buy a firearm, ignoring the current waiting periods and everything else we have in Maryland, getting an HQL and everything else. But I really think it would probably be misused by prosecutors.
Absolutely, where you're found guilty of some sort of small crime or something like that, and the court gives you, either demands that you put yourself on this list or makes it a condition of some sort of ruling that you put yourself on this list that may not be easy to get yourself off of.
And then you forget, and 30 years later, you go to purchase a gun, and oops, you've committed a crime.
Yep, and that's, everything you guys are saying is exactly what Republicans on my committee brought up during the hearing, either this year or last year. It's kind of all a blur, but yeah, thankfully it's not going anywhere.
All right. Next on our list, House Bill 810, weapons crimes, switch and auto sears. Andrew.
This would be your lightning jumpers for your Glocks that will turn your Glock pistols into fully automatic. You just depress the trigger and it's going to shoot the whole magazine. Currently illegal federally.
Correct.
I am unaware that we are having a rash of auto sears being used in crimes in the state of Maryland that aren't being prosecuted by the U.S. Attorney's Office successfully and zealously. And this was introduced by the Speaker herself as a top legislative priority for the state of Maryland. And it has currently passed the House and crossed over to the Senate. And Delegate, you tell us all about this.
Yeah, I voted against it. So this was interesting. Our chairman, he went out, Luke Clippinger, he went out to a gun range, I believe some kind of gun, I think it was a gun range maybe for the state police or something, and used one of these devices on a gun and shot it and recorded a video to see for himself how it's used, and he showed the video, and I think that was for him what convinced him that this was needed. And I believe all the Republicans, or most of the Republicans, voted against it.
This gets to a point that I think is a consistent theme in Maryland, where our activist progressive legislators are too lazy and don't request the research be done to see what is covered by federal law, what has already been established in court cases. I just think this is a matter of laziness. I don't know what else you can ascribe this waste of time to.
Problem looking for a solution, or a solution looking for a problem.
Yeah. Delegate, are you aware of a rash of these firearms being misused in the state of Maryland? I'm not, but just want to know if you've heard of this.
It's covered by federal law.
Yeah.
Why are we talking about this? It's
Right.
a waste of time. It's covered by federal statute.
I mean,
Well,
unless
they
they
have to seem like they're doing something.
Oh, gosh, thank
legislative
you.
prerogative.
I need more of that.
Yeah, just when we need more laws. Delegate, any thoughts from you?
You guys got it right. When session is over and the Democrat caucus or the governor or the speaker, whoever releases, we all do to some degree release some kind of statement on our wins and losses, or when we start going back to all the breakfasts and the lunches and the this and the that, and we go back to our people, and they will claim this as some kind of, tough on crime win when it's a do nothing. So
House Bill 869, cross-filed as Senate Bill 752, public safety, firearms background checks, victim notification, and Maryland State Police Gun Center. Andrew, what is this thing?
This, I think, is another solution in search of a problem. So this would apply in very limited circumstances where you are a prohibited person due to a current final protective order against you. And under both federal and state law, you cannot possess firearms if you are subject to a final protective order. This would require that if you then went and attempted to purchase a firearm during the final protective order period, the Secretary of State Police would then have to be notified of this and then provide notice to your alleged victim of the final protective order that you had attempted to and been rejected from purchasing a firearm during that period, all of which were crimes to begin with.
Well, this is going to go back to the comment Nicolee just had a moment ago, research. A similar issue like this, I want to say is either the 11th or the 5th Circuit, is pending. The district court has ruled both the federal law as unconstitutional. And it's either the 5th or the 11th Circuit, and it's waiting for oral arguments before the appeals court.
So stay tuned on this one.
Stay tuned.
Yeah.
And it didn't go anywhere.
Did not.
House Bill 935, cross-filed as Senate Bill 784, Comprehensive Community Safety Funding Act, 11% excise tax. Andrew, what say you?
It has passed the Senate. It is off to the House. And during my limited time in Annapolis this year, they are desperate for money. They have been checking under every couch cushion, under every pillow, asking the tooth fairy to come early.
And it does what, though?
This money would go to a variety of...
Not to the money. What does it tax?
Ammunition, firearms, firearms accessories, which include a magazine or magazine loader, a firearm scope or optic, stock, grip, handguard, or body armor.
So all of these things coming into Maryland will have to be taxed at 11% by the person bringing them in, and then that amount is going to be added up and passed on to the end user. It's going to injure those small businesses, those gun stores and things that are doing business in Maryland, and it's also going to find a way to it makes a way to prevent people from buying these things.
Right.
No, my question will be, how is this not a violation of the Commerce Clause? Because now Maryland is putting the products sold in a different state, in a neighboring state, at a disadvantage. It's giving Maryland an advantage here.
This sounds like a question for the Fourth Circuit here. and it's an excise tax on a fundamental right. I hate to say it. Let's throw it in the... Let's bring back a poll tax while we're at it.
Chris, what if we made sure that every box of firearms accessories that came in had a bag of marijuana in it? Could we get past this that way? What do you have on this?
So have any of you got a chance to see the amend? It was amended pretty heavily. Did anybody get to see the amended version? Because I think the amended version actually changed it from being an excise tax on the dealers to now it is a sales and use tax on the consumer, I believe.
I will pull this up right now and take a look. Give me 1 second.
Because they did a carve out for law enforcement officers and retired law enforcement officers. But yeah, I think this got changed to actually from being on the dealers to now it is on the individual. This is so the sponsor of this, Sarah Elthworth, she's running for Congress, and I believe she's the front runner right now in District 3. I think this is the I'm running for Congress bill to appease the Democrat primary voters. But it really wasn't even that popular amongst their own party because
good to know.
It's actually voted.
It's my district.
5 Democrats actually voted with the Republicans, and you don't see that a lot, especially on something that involves taxes and firearms.
You are correct, Delegate. It is now a sales and use tax at 11%.
Yeah, so it's
so what do we think? What do we think the likelihood of this becoming law is?
So that goes back to my question: sales and use tax in addition to the current 6%.
No, it will just be at 11. So it'll be 11% with 5% of it going to the target recipients. I just saw that. I got the list here. The shock trauma, the Violence Intervention and Prevention Program Fund, the Maryland Trauma Physician Services Fund, the Survivors of Homicide Victims Grant Program, and the Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention.
And the Safe Streets program as well?
This could indirectly flow to them, perhaps.
Okay.
Yes, not specifically named.
All right. What is the thoughts on the likelihood of this making it becoming law?
So this was in the Ways and Means committee in the House. So and I'm not on that committee. I don't know.
Set for a hearing on March 28th at 1 o'clock. Let your legislators know if they're on the Ways and Means Committee.
All right. So,
I mean, the House. I mean, I'm shocked the House version didn't get out, and I didn't watch, or I wasn't in the committee to see the hearing. But I mean, the House is certainly more. They're trying to find new revenue sources, and the House is looking to introduce new taxes, whereas the Senate president has really been kind of outspoken, saying that this is not the year we're going to be raising taxes. So it's kind of bizarre that it got out of the Senate but not the House. Yeah, I don't know what's going on there.
all right, moving right along. Going right to the dealers again. House Bill 947, cross-filed as Senate Bill 488. Civil actions, public nuisances, firearms industry members, Gun Industry Accountability Act of 2024. Andrew.
This has passed the Senate. It is now in the House. This is our great friend again, State Senator Waldstreicher, another one of his wonderful creations. And this has been inspired by, I'm sure you're aware, the unfortunate tragedies that have occurred in other states like Sandy Hook, where they ended up suing the firearms manufacturer. They have some federal protections from the firearms manufacturers, and the effort behind this bill is to stop the federal preemption, give a separate cause of action here in Maryland, and essentially allow the Attorney General or other people who feel they have been victimized by gun violence to sue the manufacturers of firearms. And the silent part is drive them all out of business.
Well, it wasn't just firearms manufacturers, wasn't it? It was anyone that sells a firearm accessory, firearm-related product. Wasn't that some of the language that we had?
It is a very, very, very large bill here out of the Senate. There were a number of amendments to it, but as you are describing it, yes, the goal is a firearm industry member. So that's going to be anyone who engaged in the sale, manufacture, distribution, importation, or the marketing of a firearm-related product. And a firearm-related product means firearm ammunition, a component or part of a firearm, or a firearm accessory.
And the question is also whether that would apply to the small business man or woman who sells
everyone up,
weapon.
it will be everyone up and down the chain, from your mom and pop gun store all the way up to the big manufacturer.
Because we can't possibly go after the criminal
No,
here who committed the act, whether it be with a machete or a gun. We're just going after whoever.
So, Delegate, we can count on your opposition to this bill.
Yeah. I think I'm a firm nay.
All right, House Bill 1166, cross-filed as Senate Bill 501, handguns, wear, carry, and transport handbook publication.
This is one of the most shocking pieces of legislation I've ever seen come out of Annapolis from Senator McKay, and this would require the Secretary of State Police to annually publish, in consultation with the Office of the Attorney General, a handbook that summarizes the Maryland laws relating to wearing, carrying, and transporting a handgun in public, and require the secretary to make these copies of the book available to everyone for free. And so citizens could, from the government, clearly and simply hear what their rights are for the wearing, carrying, and transporting of firearms.
So will these be like in little booklets and like cartoon characters, like they dropped over France during World War II, so everybody can understand them?
I can only hope.
Okay.
I can only hope.
I hope that's what our tax dollars are going towards. You know?
This is the best bill I've heard coming out of Annapolis this year, quite frankly.
All right, discussion.
It's passed the Senate. It's in the House. There was a companion bill filed in the House already, and it died there. What are your thoughts, Delegate?
I mean, it's a confusing time right now if you're a law-abiding citizen and you want to wear and carry. I mean, with everything in the courts, with the changes at the federal, with the Bruin decision, I mean, this is the most common sense bill I think I've seen all year. It's saying, hey, we want people to follow the law, and the laws keep changing and they're up in the air and they're being fought in the courts. Maybe we should help these people by understanding what exactly the rules are. Yeah, so I'm glad to see that version is still alive. Hopefully it gets through.
And Chris, you hit the nail on the head. Look, I mean, the laws are changing. They can be complex. They're confusing. We're sitting here, we're going through these things, and the average person doesn't understand what's going on. They don't realize what's legal today may be illegal tomorrow. And that's why sharing this information and making it palatable for the average person so that they don't get themselves into a jackpot is important. All right, House Bill 1178, handgun permit holders' authority to carry handguns in state parks and forests.
The fine delegate is a co-sponsor for this piece of legislation. God forbid that we allow individuals who have lawful permits from having handguns in state parks or forests. And the delegate can, I hope, tell me otherwise, but I think this is dead.
Yeah.
Dead as a doorknob, right, Chris?
Yeah, it's dead. It was a good bill hearing, good discussion about how large some of our state parks are and how some of these state parks could have one ranger working it, and how you are pretty much on your own when you get into the heart of some of these parks. And they talk a lot about women, who run through these parks, and they are completely vulnerable to a rape or an assault. And and
Apparently, these progressive Democrats would rather have me be dead and on an episode of Criminal Minds instead of alive and able to defend myself alone in a vast space, whether a bear attacked me or some evil rapist. Yes.
We haven't seen horror movies involving women alone in parks. This is a novel concept. This is completely in our imagination. Only in ours, no one else's.
All right, so let's see here. We have House Bill 1301, wearing, carrying, transporting firearms, business sign posting requirements. It looks like that one was withdrawn, Andrew.
That one is super dead. And this would have been a business that does not want firearms on the business's property, requirements for signage that would have to be posted.
Okay.
Very controversial, but withdrawn. So that's the end of that.
Okay. And House Bill, let's see here. House Bill 1473, cross-filed as Senate Bill 983, hunting lead and lead-based ammunition phase out. And I have some thoughts on that, but Andrew, what do you have on that?
This would require the Department of Natural Resources to establish a certain process to phase out on or before December 31st, 2026. So by 2027, the use of lead or lead-based ammunition for hunting, and requiring the department to establish a process to certify ammunition as non-lead ammunition.
And so the problem I have with this is a slippery slope. So people that hunt waterfowl understand the difference between steel shot, business shot, lead shot. But to me, this is going to be that first salvo into attacking ammunition generally, because anyone that knows anything about ammo knows that it has lead in it, because lead has specific properties that make it good for making bullets. So my concern is that it would, it could pass and then we see it go a different route and then they're attacking something else and something else and something else.
All lead ammunition is banned.
I think that's the ultimate goal. They don't get there immediately, but they'll say for ecological reasons, for public health reasons and things like that, we need to phase this out. Well, that would essentially make ammunition so expensive you wouldn't be able to buy it, because the things that would replace lead are much more expensive than lead itself.
We should expect this to be a reoccurring theme.
Absolutely.
I hope no progressives are listening to this, because they're going to write that down, Duane.
Don't give them any ideas.
Yes.
The Urban Defense Ammunition Bill.
we don't let them listen to this program anyway.
With a 100% excise tax.
That's right. Okay. So we have House Bill House Bill 1480, cross-filed as Senate Bill 611, Frederick and Washington County bow hunting, openly carrying handguns. Andrew?
This would prohibit the Department of Natural Resources from prohibiting licensed bow hunters from openly carrying a handgun under certain circumstances in Frederick County and Washington County during deer hunting season. This makes total sense why one would be opposed to this, the deer lobby, but anyone else, this is nonsensical why anyone would be opposed to this.
These are people that already have handgun permits?
Yes, and that are out hunting with bows and wish to have a handgun with them while it's occurring. Delegate, what are your thoughts of this?
I am a member of the Frederick County delegation. I have a little piece of Frederick, but either way, it gives me a vote within the delegation. And I was hoping it would go somewhere, but don't look like it.
All right. So this last one that I have, Senate Bill 1097, the Firearms Safety and Firearms Crimes Gun Buyback Program, requirements to destroy a firearm and components. Now, the reason I'm bringing this up is because there were several emails that came out to a lot of people that are subscribed to NRA and other pro-gun groups where they were in the emails that we received, and I forwarded these to my associates here. There was discussion about how this bill was going to be disqualifying qualified instructors, and everybody that was a qualified instructor to teach HQL and wear and carry would their certificate would be no good anymore. And frankly, myself and Andrew and Andre, I'm pretty sure you did as well. We scoured this and all of its different forms and its amended forms, and I couldn't find any such language in there. Andrew, did you?
Nothing of the sort. I've read this several times. This deals with gun buybacks and the theft of firearms. And reading this, it passed the Senate 45-0, and it's now in the House, and there is nothing in here about changing HQL instructor qualifications or anything like that.
Right. So discussion on that. Does anybody have any additional information that maybe we didn't see?
No.
Delegate Tomlinson, I think you were telling us that it passed out of the Senate and all the Republicans voted for it.
Yeah, and I got the same information, or saw the same information that as amended, it was going to be affecting firearm instructors. And I'm scanning through the bill that passed out of the Senate, and I can't imagine that if it did, the Republicans would have voted with it. So yeah, I'm not.
I mean, the biggest part of this is it deals with government agencies or nonprofits that have firearm gun buybacks that advertise the guns will be destroyed. That's a key component of this. They have to then destroy the guns unless a police department wants a particular firearm for an ongoing criminal investigation. The firearms all have to be destroyed.
I mean, the only thing I could think of is maybe they put the wrong bill number or whatever, but I scanned everything I could find, and I received more than one email from more than one of these groups about this, and I've had it sent to me by several people, and I'm just not seeing it. So I added it here because I knew people were going to be asking, but it's not there as far as I can see. So with that said, is that all that we can expect? Ask generally to the panel. Is that all that we can expect this year, or could there be more stuff introduced later? Do we have more to be concerned about?
There's one other bill that I'd like to mention. So it's creating the Center for Firearm Violence Prevention and Intervention. It's House Bill 583. The Senate cross-file Senate Bill 475. This is supposed to be modeled after President Biden's White House Safer States, or it's a part. It came out of it was a key recommendation from Biden and his White House Safer States agenda. In fact, the president's deputy director of the Office of Gun Violence was there for the press conference. So I don't know if I even need to expand beyond that this is something that we're doing to make Biden happy. But
I'm opposed to this. I've heard all I need to hear, but please continue, sir.
Come on, man.
I don't think this center they're building is to go after the criminals that are murdering people in the streets. I think what they're trying to do here with this center is come up with justifications on why law-abiding citizens shouldn't have guns, because I think that this Center for Firearm Violence Prevention is to go after completely just that, and not the actual criminal violent element that we see in the cities. That's my belief.
So is it safe to say the recap of anything that's moving forward is simply to protect criminals and punish law-abiding citizens?
Pretty much.
Is
Scary.
it safe to say that the Second Amendment is the least popular amendment in Annapolis? Can we just at least agree on that?
Free speech is also kind of problematic.
Well,
So I guess my question would be, in addition to that, would be, can any of these that, quote, didn't make it, could they rear their heads at a later time this session? Andrew?
I think we're out of time. Absent extraordinary circumstances, the end is near. I'll, of course, defer to the delegate, but I do not think any of these that we've declared dead are going to rise like Lazarus.
Yeah, I think they're mostly dead. But the one thing, being in the minority party in Annapolis, that you quickly learn is that the rules only apply until they are no longer needed. And when the majority party is a supermajority, for every rule there's another rule that allows you to basically override the previous rule. So I wouldn't put the gravestone over top of any of these bills until 12:01 on Tuesday morning.
Understood. So Nicolee and Chris, let's talk about the 2024 Republican Public Safety Agenda. I know we talked a lot about these different bills, but just kind of in brief for the listeners, just tell us about that.
Well, if I could, it just summarized 5 different bills. The first was one of the first we talked about, the Violent Firearms Offender Act. The second was Safe Communities Act of 2024. Third, Gun Theft Felony Act. Of course, it should be bad for someone to steal your weapon. Drug-free roadways, to stop a car that smells like the entire state's worth of hashishes in it. And then Juvenile Justice Restoration Act of 2024. What is so troubling to me is these were such common sense proposals that if you talk to any average Marylander, they would say, of course, why is this a debate? Like, this should be a no-brainer. And yet they were soundly defeated. We are looking at a glimmer of hope for a portion of this juvenile justice reform that, once again, was a problem created last session by our progressive governor, who believes the biggest problem is not giving enough favors and concessions to violent criminals and instead holding all of us law-abiding citizens, basically penalizing us for being good citizens. So I'm really deeply saddened that there wasn't more bipartisan support of these very logical, common sense proposals. I applaud and lift up, Senator Watson and any other Democrats that were willing to come together for the sake of their communities, of their constituents, to support law-abiding citizens and make sure criminals know there should be a cause and effect. Because guess what? It's the greatest deterrent to crime. It's not what we're seeing in the state. It is why Marylanders are driven out of the state when you persecute us economically, when you uplift criminals and step on our rights. So I don't know, Delegate Tomlinson, my hat's off to you for fighting the good fight in Annapolis, for representing Carroll and Frederick County so well. But my heart goes out to you, because it would be very frustrating, I think, to deal with people uplifting the people who most destabilize our society, being those violent criminals, when we have such a problem in especially certain parts of the state. it's incredibly depressing to be a law-abiding citizen who follows this, which once again is why this is such a community service, because we don't essentially have a freestanding media for the most part. And those that don't have enough staff to cover all of this and understand it. And then we also have a problem that progressives in the state just say if something is classified as a Second Amendment issue, they ignore it and don't care about it other than saying it's bad.
How can we tax it?
Exactly. So it's disheartening. The best thing we could do to promote safe communities would have strong individual citizens who are rewarded for being good citizens and know that if a crime is committed, the criminal will be punished.
Absolutely.
You stop it with that.
I know.
That's too much
it's
common
wild.
sense. We can't do that. All right. So, final thoughts. I'm going to go around the room. Andrew.
For the Second Amendment, thankfully or not thankfully, once again, the big focus this year has been on the budget problems in Annapolis. So instead of attacking the Second Amendment directly, they're coming after to try and tax it. Hopefully the courts will agree with us. There's an analogy, and we'll be playing this out, and let's see what passes. But can they tax the ink that newspapers use? We will see. Can they tax the ammunition, especially that we use?
Andre.
Well, I would say, in par, it's been a good session for the 2A folks. That a lot, when we first did the first episode of this, it's like, wow, what are they going to come back with now? So with all of these bills on life support, because as the delegates say, you can't say it's dead until Tuesday at 12:01 a.m. So I think we had a good session.
Okay. Nicolee.
I'm going to say if you look at the sum total of last session and this session, and you look at how on the offense progressives have been on 2A issues, plus really everything else that affects your everyday life, it is getting very burdensome to live as a law-abiding citizen in this state. And once again, if your goal is to tax us till the end of time, you have to have productive citizens to tax and take our money, right? So I think the Democrats have been governed and taken over entirely by progressives for the most part in this state. I think it's a very sad thing. I think it's healthy when you have a competitive two-party system. I think you get the best results with competition. Sadly, it is one-party rule in Annapolis, and once again, completely overtaken by progressives. I think it's a very bad thing for Marylanders. I think it's a very bad thing for law-abiding citizens. Apparently, it's great for criminals, but I don't think any of us want to live in a society like that. So I am deeply concerned.
Agreed. Chris.
I am going to actually attempt to end on a positive note. I said it earlier that I think the most important bill that I believe will end up on the governor's desk is the Juvenile Law Reform Act. Like I said earlier, was introduced by the Senate President and Speaker, along with the chairs of the judicial proceedings and House Judiciary Committee. And is it the bill? Is it the bill that the House or that the joint Republicans introduced, the Juvenile Justice Restoration Act? No, it's not that. It doesn't go as far as we would like it to go, but it's an all right bill. I mean, I voted for it. I think all the Republicans voted for it, both in committee and on the floor. It's a good step, and it's a moment for the Democrats to hopefully recognize that what they did 2 years ago was not. It didn't help anybody. It didn't help victims, and it didn't help kids who are becoming criminals at the age of 11 or 12. So if there's one slightly tough on crime bill that's going to get through, I think it's this. And I'll give my chair credit. He worked with the Republicans and took some of our amendments and incorporated into his bill, especially the part about keeping student sex offenders from not being able to return to the classroom. Like we saw that issue, I think it was in Baltimore County. So I am. That is one bill that I think we can be happy about, and I hope that gets through, and hopefully we start to see some changes in regards to juvenile offenders.
Understood. So as we wrap up, I want to thank our guests for being here tonight. I hope you'll come back and join us again. I want to thank everyone for tuning in. And please remember to comment, share, like, and subscribe. Stay tuned for our next episode. And we are planning on doing a public filming of the final episode in the 2024 Maryland legislative session coming up in Middle River, Maryland. So stay tuned for that. So for the Urban Defense Podcast, I'm Duane Urban, along with Andrew Saller, Andre McDonald, our special guest, Nicolee Ambrose, and Delegate Chris Tomlinson. Thanks for tuning in. Don't forget that knowledge is mental ammunition. And remember, train, fight, and win.